Hey Grubsters, and welcome to a discussion about a very interesting mechanic in Warcraft 3 called Upkeep. Upkeep came up recently because I had an interview with the new studio from Frost Giant, the new studio Frost Giant that is working on the RTS Stormgate. In an interview I did with them, I asked them a question about Upkeep, and this is what they answered.
Because of the upkeep system in particular, it kind of narrows the game down into these very specific reactions from players and very specific game plans of games that end up very similar to each other, and that's something we want.
I found that very interesting. Of course, as a Warcraft 3 World Championship player and someone that loves Upkeep quite a lot, I've given a lot of thought to Upkeep, and I would love to take in more information about the kind of effect that Upkeep has on players, or the impression of what effect it has on players. I mentioned Upkeep, they mentioned Upkeep as a negative psychological mechanic that when you push over 50 food, you get a ding and a yellow message that says you've entered low Upkeep and you'll be getting less gold. That's how the game explains it, and that's how it works. When I checked that with some of my audience, some people did say that they did indeed feel like they did something wrong. And my idea for that was, you could just say you get a lot of bonus money when you're in no upkeep, a bit of bonus money in low upkeep, and no bonus money when you're in high upkeep. So you do reverse the psychological feeling of it. Psychology aside, whether you've done some good or right, let's talk about the actual mechanic of upkeep, how it works, and why I think it is a pretty good gaming system. First, let me explain you what upkeep is. When you're in no upkeep, you're in a 0 to 50 population. You're getting 100% of your gold income from all sources. Once you go to 51 population, which starts as soon as you train a unit to go over 50 pop, even before it is made, you are said to be in low upkeep. You will get 70% of your gold income from all sources. This is all encompassing. In Warcraft 3, you can get gold from mining from a gold mine, selling items, pillaging with orcish units, gaining money, gaining gold from an ally who has given it to you, and from creeping. All of these are reduced by being in low upkeep. So if you are in a 4-on-4 and you have one base and your ally has 3 bases and he's at 80 pop and you're at 50 pop, he already paid upkeep over the money that he had gained up until that point. But when he gives it to you, you get 100% of what he gives to you. Don't go to 55 food and then ask for money in 4-on-4 because you'll pay double upkeep, and this is not a good thing. So know that it affects all sources, even transmute from the alchemist, trading, everything. And when you're in high upkeep, 81 population, or up until the max of 100, you get 40% from all sources. That is what upkeep is. It doesn't affect wood income. Warcraft 3 economy is mostly all about gold. Wood is more of a technical limiter on your tech speed. So you need a certain amount of wood to go to tier 2 with the stronghold. You need a certain amount of wood to build a spirit lodge and then get bloodlust and torrents with pulverize. And eventually, in most cases, wood ceases to be an issue. You'll have more wood than you could possibly need, especially if you have a goblin shredder. And sometimes you will have wood scarcity, but infinite wood is never good for you, where infinite gold would be really good for you. So wood is more of like a limiter, and gold is an actual enabler of everything else. So common situations for no upkeep, they involve spending 5 to 15 population on heroes. A hero costs 5. An early game that's going to be 5 or 10 for 1 or 2 heroes. And then you'll have, on average, on one base, 13 workers, 5 on gold, 8 on wood. You can see that every race has different standard wood count. Undead usually 6 via 3 ghouls, 7 peons, human has 8 peasants, and night elf 9 wisps. This can deviate a bit based on harass and some personal preferences and some other factors, expecting to lose some units. You may make more as a buffer. But if you're on one base, on average like this. So your total population with 2 heroes and 13 workers is 23. That leaves you in the standard 50 food army to actually have a 27 food army, because 23 is heroes and workers. 27 units, that's like 9 grunts, or perhaps 4 grunts, 3 raiders, and 2 Spirit Walkers. If you're on 2 bases, you'll need 5 more population to put workers in your second gold mine. Maybe you have a 3rd hero by then already. That would be a total of 33 pop. You would only have 17 food left for army in a no upkeep army, which is the equivalent of 4 Wind Riders. It's not a lot, and you'll feel more incentivized to go to low upkeep, to push over 50 and go all the way beyond. Here is where it starts getting interesting. The more bases you have when gathering gold, the more incentivized you are, economically speaking, to stay in a 50 food population. You would have a very small army though. The more bases you have, the smaller your army is. This is a kind of reverse snowball effect where someone that has more bases needs more food to defend those bases. You can no longer have a 27 population army, you only get a 17 food army. Or maybe a 22 food army if you don't have a 3rd hero. Either way, just the existence of that second base takes someone from 100% economy to 200% economy. They're getting 20 gold per second instead of 10 gold per second. And that's just for mining. Creeping will still be counted as usual, probably roughly at the same rate as a 1 base player. Now, Warcraft 3 has a great deal of asymmetry when it comes to economy. In Warcraft 3, some races expand better than others. Undead can defend with Nerubian Tower, and Night Elf tree defends itself and the wisps are encapsulated in a free to repair and tangled gold mine, and human can fast build their town hall. And Night Elf can walk their tree of life and help to defeat the creeps with that tree of life, all the while healing itself while eating trees. Orcish tier 1 expansion is the slowest, though they do have a tiny great hole, but this comes out at tier 3. So everyone has a different ability to take an early expansion. And the races that will end up doing it best in the meta of a game, they will also take an economy advantage. Upkeep serves as a counter effect to this very big natural advantage. Because of Upkeep and certain other mechanics, since the asymmetry in Warcraft 3 runs deep, it is possible to defeat a 2 base player with 1 base. And this is absolutely intended when viewing the metagame of Warcraft 3. Because the no upkeep player will be getting 100% income. And the low upkeep 2 base player will be getting 140% income. Remember, they drop to 70% from 100% the moment they go over 50. Twice 70% leads to a total of 140% income. 14 gold per second. That's only 40% more than 1 base player. But if the upkeep didn't exist, then getting a second base is so good because, well, everyone would want to get it because there's no downside. You would go to a second base, and when you would have money, you would make a unit. And when you have more money, you'll make another. And if you have a lot of money, you'll make a lot of units. And you'll have a big army, and the small army guy can't defeat you. You're both creeping, but the bigger army creeps faster, and it beats you when you meet, so they take the contested camps. And they can even kill you in your own base. You see this often in other RTSs like AoE and SC2, that if one player can take an expansion and the other does not, the expansion guy very quickly overtakes the 1 base player in power. It's very quick, that tipping point. In Age of Empires 4, in fact, you can go second TC, and if you don't get punished within a minute or 2, you're so far ahead of the 1 base player. And that is also a type of gameplay style, but it has some drawbacks, because that window is very small, and the 1 base player needs to practically go all in. Now, Warcraft 3 doesn't really have very good all-in mechanics. You can't build rams, and units don't kill buildings as fast as in SC2. So it is very healthy that there is at least a gameplay style for the 1 base player, where it's not just all about more bases, more bases, more bases. That's what makes combat interesting, what makes maneuvering in Warcraft 3 interesting, and it is enabled by the upkeep system. Walking around with an agile army that is faster and can choose when and where to fight maybe sometimes harassing workers, maybe sometimes engaging in small skirmishes, is now something you can do. And someone that quickly pushes over 50, they are 40% more income than you, but maybe if you're just 40% more efficient in creeping, in applying pressure, in forcing them to defend their 2 bases, keeping them scared, and then quickly grabbing a creep camp, maybe you can get that 40% back somehow through creeping, through items you find, XP you get, small skirmishes you win initially because your army is still better right now than theirs. Take away the upkeep, and suddenly I think it would remove a facet of strategy. Then, there is another interesting gameplay decision in the design of upkeep. How much to save up before crossing the upkeep threshold? Let's go back to a meta of the year 2007. It was common on maps like Melting Valley and some other maps for human to do a Mountain King fast expansion against Orc. Mountain King fast expansion would use Stormbolt to remove the Orc town portal if they go Farseer, or to repeatedly pressure the life of the Blade Master. You could bolt surround grunts, and the Mountain King was a good defender early game. He gave up some in creeping speed what the Archmage could do, and he took more damage than what the Archmage would do because of water elementals not existing now in order to tank. But it quickly earned itself back in the ability with its first 75 mana litany of spells to defend against the early grunts. This secured an early expansion. You would then go Paladin second, and you would build a lot of towers to protect your 2 bases. You would go triple Gryphon Aviary, get armor upgrades, and prepare for a massive Griffin and Dragonhawk army. The Orc would have to respond with Bat Riders. Headhunters weren't that good yet, they got buffed recently in the last 5 years, and Headhunters were not a viable counter to heavy air. Bat Riders are also not a superb counter to Griffins, but they get the job done when you've got enough of them. You would additionally supplement anti-air damage via the Blade Master, who would get a Lightning Orb to be able to attack air. Your Shadow Hunter could attack air. You would get a Kodo and a couple of Walkers that could help a bit to attack air. And you would get the Alchemist second, the Goblin Alchemist from the Tavern, who has a natural anti-air attack and can also throw Acid Bomb that does damage and reduces the armor of enemy air. All those together wouldn't be enough. You would need 3 to 4 bestiaries of non-stop Bat Rider production to counter their Griffins. Now, the human took a fast expo. You would try to counter fast expo. You remember what I said about a small, agile army that tries to take map control against the human player. And this is still true. You try to deny as much as possible the human from creeping after they set up their expansion. You try to do a boa constrictor playstyle where you contain them and you take the creeps around their base first in order to force them to go out on a limb and go ever further and expose themselves to more risk before the Griffins came out. You would try to get a counter expansion and they would try to bum rush it with a bunch of footies, Zeppelin perhaps, Goblin Shredder perhaps, Goblin Sapper, maybe Mercs if they had access to it, and that would either succeed or it wouldn't. Whatever happened, Orc would re-expand or get the expand. They would have a lot less money than the human, but they would have better hero levels and maybe are a bit more, they would get better items. Then, the question became, can the Orc player take a third base and can the human player take a third base? An average game would see the Orc take a third base and then try with all they can to defend the first Griffin attack with Bat Riders. And this is where economy got really interesting. If economies were linear and you got all the money that you got from the expansion, the human would be rich. The moment they put down their first aviaries, they would throw down a Griffin production. They would start making Griffins. They would always have their first Griffins at the exact same time. They could always try to use the first Griffins at the exact same time to go across to the Orc base and kill some burrows that have heavy armor. You couldn't get fortified armor yet until the time that you got to castle, to tier 3. And you would always have the same timing because after all, Altar is made, then MK is made, then they go to their expansion, they make the expo, they make the tower, they go to tier 2, aviary, go to tier 3, reach tier 3, make Griffin. And that would be linear. And you would do it that way. But that's not how it went, because the human had to make a decision what is my target population count? Am I looking to push out with the first couple of griffins and risk that I get there in time in order to use my magic damage to do 200% damage on orcish burrows and kill them before Fortified comes out? This is a risk. They would be pushing over 50 food quickly as a timing attack, as they call it in SC2, to try and beat the clock of orcish fortified defenses and the orcish initial bat riders, or raiders even, because 2 griffins can be dealt with heroes and raiders, but 6 griffins cannot. So this was an interesting timing looming over my head. When will the axe drop? I would have to scout in order to know, are they doing an early timing? And I called that the sky timing. Not because the units are in the air, but because the famous Chinese player Li Xiaofeng, aka Sky, the first champion from China in Warcraft 3, who popularized Warcraft 3 in China across to millions of people, because now they had a home champion, did a lot for the game esports and did a lot for Warcraft 3 esports in China. Sky, he liked to hit early. He would go quickly over 50, make a couple of griffins, and then roughly at 64, 68 population, he would hit already. So against Sky, I needed to start with 2 bestiaries, start making bats pretty early and don't be greedy. I like to be greedy and keep under 50 population to maximize the gold. And God knows I needed it because my expansion is so much slower than the humans, right? But I needed to get bats quickly. He would hit with 2 to 6 griffins, typically. And his blacksmith would have given him by then 1 or 2 armor upgrades. Now, armor upgrades help against Bat Rider explosion. It means Bat Rider does less damage. Then there was Infi. Infi was greedy like me. He liked to save up on 50 pop until he had 1k, 2k gold. He wanted to get his 3 armor upgrades first. He wanted to get his paladin level 2 at first, to get devotion aura, which would help with additional armor. Infi wanted to get a protection scroll first, maybe 1 or 2 staffs of sanctuary. He would sometimes try to get a 3rd base before he even started making any air at all. So if against Infi I would have initially made 6 Bat Riders quickly in anticipation of a quick rush, I would be on 56 population or 62 population. He's still on 50. He towered up a 3rd base. Now he's got 3k gold and he goes straight to 100 pop. And my lack of scouting could have led to that situation. Now I've got 8 bats. How am I going to use them? Do I attack his base with it? They don't creep very well. They don't fight against ground very well. So maybe I want to kill his base. But there's 6 towers in every base. Yeah, that's not really viable to go in with 6 bats. Yes, there's liquid fire, but it's not good enough. And so I need to scout and they need to scout me. And I needed to increase my understanding of all the different timing windows. And Upkeep made those timing windows staggered out across many possibilities. So I started doing the maths, the monster maths. And I realized that I needed 1200 gold in the bank with 3 bestiaries for certain timings to reach, with non-stop production, unfettered production, to reach 74 population bats with everything else that had come before it. That would be a certain amount of bats that would be suitable for a certain timing. Then I needed 2200 gold for a different timing with 4 bestiaries. And if I went for 3000 gold, because I wanted to be really greedy and with 4 bestiaries, I realized that actually doesn't make sense, 3000, because I could have non-stop Bat Rider production for so long that I would actually breach the total population cap, which is not reachable. Like I couldn't go over 100. So there is a maximum upper limit of gold that I could have in the bank that makes sense. And there is a certain minimum I need. And that doesn't even take into account yet that while you're at 50 pop, every item that you can buy has a virtual equal value as how much you spend for it. So for instance, if I have been gathering on 50 population the whole game, a scroll of Town Portal costs 350 gold. So if I buy a scroll of Town Portal while I'm in no upkeep, that costs 350 gold. But if I've been spending a long time in no upkeep, in low upkeep, low, 70% income, then how much does a 350 gold town portal essentially cost? 500 gold. Virtually, it costs virtually 500 gold, because I am getting 350. I need to spend still 350, but I'm getting 30% less, 70% of my income. So it's like 1.42 times 350 is 500 gold. So if I start making army early, and then I realize, wait a minute, I need a town portal scroll, I need a scroll of protection, I need a scroll of healing, I need a heal salve, I need a speed scroll. I'm spending an inflated cost for everything, essentially. So there is a kind of preparation you want to do before going to low upkeep to make sure that the target that you are going towards, whatever that is, I'm looking to have a hit and run army with speed scroll. I'm looking to have a hit your base army and then TP out. I'm looking to be ready for any fight that we get and have a mass headhunter army. Well, then I better start with a heal scroll. A heal scroll for a 50 food army is sometimes not worth it because you don't have enough units to use the spread of healing, but you buy it anyway because it is a prep cost and it is still cheaper now to buy it. And then I go for a certain gold count to go over 50 pop with a certain unit count. So in Orc Mirror, if I'm at 50 population, I want to get all the prep costs first. I want to get one armor upgrade. I want to get a speed scroll. I want to get a mana pot. I want to get a clarity pot, heal scroll, and invul pot. Then I want 600 gold on top of that, so that I can exactly afford one grunt, one raider, and one walker. That puts me on 59 population, and that pretty much throttles me at 60 for the rest of the game, because I've just spent the last gold that I have to go from 50 to 60. I'm now gaining less money. I still need to make a burrow after that and go from 60 to 70. And then sometimes I'll need heal salve. And sometimes I need to replace units. So if you go over 50 food on one base with 600 gold, then you're pretty much locked in on 60 food. And what does that do? Action tension. It creates tension for me to take action. One of the less interesting things in Starcraft 2 is that you make an army to defend against Widowmine drops, 3 stalkers here and 3 stalkers here, right? You need that against Widowmine drop. Then you need to start making sentries and zealots to prepare for a frontal marine attack. And then you need a colossus. And you have money, you make that money work for you. You make a unit. And now he could have Vikings as well, so I need to make more units. So every time I have money, I make more units, but I'm standing in my base with my army, and he's standing in his base with his army, and suddenly someone decides to attack because their +1 attack finishes, and then they're gonna go for a +1 timing attack. That, I believe, is what our friend Monk from Frost Giant was talking about. Specific timing windows come out when you finish specific upgrades after a nondescript continual linear unit production. The unit production is linear, but the upgrades are timed. That leads to timing attacks. Warcraft 3 is a lot less like that. Because of the upkeep system, you can really play with the flow of the game. You can either go for a quick 60 food bare bones timing attack, 600 gold, go over from 50, no mana pots, no heal scrolls, no attack and armor upgrades, just I'm at 500, I'm at 50 pop, 550 gold, boom, 3 units and go time. There's even the 55 food timing attack, 400 gold. No whistles, no bells, no items, nothing, just 50 food, boom, 2 more units and we attack, 55 food. These are options, and all these timings differ from each other by 20 seconds. Because it takes 20 seconds to get 200 gold. So essentially Warcraft 3 is littered with timing attack opportunities, with different windows for different types of attacks. Very sophisticated attacks, all-in attacks, attacks buffered by items, attack buffered by upgrades, attacks buffered by the ability to go higher in population. I can prep my 50 food with 1 burrow to 60, or I can prep my 50 food with 2 burrows to 70 pop. That creates a window to go to 70 without needing to spend an inflated burrow cost, virtually, at 60, right? So maybe I even go from 50 to 80. I'm preparing for 30 extra population of production. and now I need 1200 gold to do 2 rounds of units, and then by that time I have enough money to do the 3rd round of units. And how long does it take to get 1200 gold? 2 minutes. 600 gold? 1 minute. So you see they're all staggered away from each other in 20-second windows or 60-second windows, depending on the increments of gold that you think in. So how much to save up before crossing upkeep threshold is really interesting. Once, just like in the real world, armies need supply, they need upkeep, and it costs money to maintain a large army. It's the same here. It creates action tension, forced action pressure, because after all, if I know that I have 8 zealots and you have 8 zealots, I can now go straight to 10 zealots and my 10 zealots will beat you. And if I attack with 10 zealots and you still have 8, then I win the game. But if you see that I went to 10 zealots and you have 8 zealots, and there was an upkeep system in Starcraft, well then you could be like, hold it! Hold! 10 zealots are coming! Hold! 8 zealots! Then you force field for a bit. Maybe you have some sentries. Okay, don't know where the sentries came from. Let's say we both have 2 sentries. And then I show up, knock knock, and you're like, hold on. And then you go to 10 zealots, but you saved up more money. Now you go to 12 zealots, and then we fight, and the 12 zealots wins. So this is a risk that the defender is taking, right? It's a risk. I used to be very adept and eager to do 50 food delays, a game of chicken. So you had Lucifer on, he liked doing 60 food timing attacks every game. And Lynn also really liked to do 60 food timing attacks. But I like to be the 70 food timing defense. So in order to do that, I had to always make army a minute later than them. So that for this minute suddenly they have map control. They want to attack. I need to run. Right? But then when they attack my base frontally, right as they hit, that was my goal, I get my final round of units. And now I'm 70 food when they're 60. And that was really interesting, because now you have like roles of the attacker and the defender. The no upkeep guy will take the role of the defender, and the low upkeep guy will take the role of the attacker. Because he has to, because he knows eventually I'll have more units. That's very different from StarCraft 2, Protoss versus Protoss. In StarCraft 2, you can harass each other's workers, and this is a way of not being overly committed to moving out your entire army. But if you're making Stalkers and Colossi, and I'm making Stalkers and Colossi, and our Forge came down at the same time, and our attack upgrade came out at the same time, why should I ever attack? You're going to have the defensive concave. There is no action tension. There are no creeps on the map. There are no relics on the map. There are no sacred sites on the map. There are no goblin shops that we need to contest items for. I don't need to level up my heroes. There is no upkeep. So there's no action tension. Defender's advantage is key, and what is the result? A turtle fest. And that's what you get with Sky Tasks against Swarmos spam. Both have the defender's advantage. And of course I know that's not really how the meta is right now. The meta, at least when I was playing a couple of months ago, was Zerg, Queen, Ravager all-ins, and Protoss gets carriers. That was the meta. And so maybe the win rate was 50-50, but one has to all-in and one has the better late game army. And that was not very interesting for both sides, as I understand it. But upkeep in a mirror matchup, especially, leads to action tension and assumed roles of attackers and defenders. And I think that's a genius mechanic. Even if it was intended to throttle the amount of units on the field. And that's it. That is my love letter to Upkeep. I don't know if StormGate will have it. And it's not only about StormGate. It led to an interesting point of thought about Upkeep that I really wanted to share with all of you. So I hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for hanging out and checking the video. And make sure to sub if you like the content.